It started on a Tuesday evening. Dave Chen sat hunched over his computer, the soft glow of the screen the only light in his small home office. The quarterly reports were due tomorrow, and as the company's most reliable accountant, he couldn't let his team down. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight when he first felt it, a small, almost unnoticeable itch at the back of his neck. He reached up without thinking, scratched lightly, and continued typing. Probably just the dry air from the office air conditioner that had been blasting all day. The building manager never seemed to get the temperature right, especially in the summer months. The next morning, Dave woke up feeling more tired than usual. He'd only managed to get about 5 hours of sleep, and the strange itching had returned. This time, it wasn't just his neck. Little spots along his hairline had begun to bother him too. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, turning his head from side to side, but couldn't see anything unusual. Just normal skin, maybe a bit red from where he'd been scratching. "You're working too hard," his wife Mai told him over breakfast, pushing a plate of toast toward him. "Your body is telling you to slow down." Dave nodded, but wasn't convinced. He'd worked long hours before without breaking out in itches. Still, he took 2 antihistamine tablets before heading to work, hoping they would help. They didn't. By lunchtime, the itching had become so distracting that his coworkers noticed him constantly reaching to scratch the back of his neck. "You okay there?" asked his cubicle neighbor Tom, peering over the divider. "You've been fidgeting all morning." "Just a bit itchy," Dave replied, embarrassed to be caught. "Probably just stress." But as the day wore on, a different theory began to form in his mind. 2 weeks ago, they'd adopted an older cat from the local shelter. Whiskers was a sweet, fluffy gray tabby who had immediately made himself at home. Dave remembered how the cat had taken a particular liking to his side of the bed, often curling up on his pillow when he wasn't looking. That evening, Dave searched online for cat flea symptoms in humans. The results matched his experience perfectly: itchy red bumps, especially around the neck and hairline. The more he read, the more convinced he became. "I think Whiskers has given me fleas," he announced to May as she walked into the living room. She looked up from her phone, surprised. "What? No way. We got him checked at the vet before bringing him home. They said he was totally clean." "Well, something's biting me," Dave insisted, showing her the increasingly irritated skin around his neck. "And it started right after Whiskers came to live with us." Mai frowned, concerned. "Maybe you should take a shower with that tea tree soap my mom gave us. It's supposed to be good for skin problems." Dave tried the soap. He also washed all their bedding in hot water, vacuumed every inch of carpet, and even bought a special flea comb to check Whiskers. The cat seemed perfectly fine, without a single flea to be found, which made the whole situation even more confusing. By the weekend, Dave was miserable. The itching had spread to his shoulders and upper back. His skin felt like it was crawling, especially at night when he was trying to sleep. He'd taken to wearing cotton gloves to bed so that he wouldn't scratch himself raw in his sleep. "I'm going to the store to get some serious flea treatment," he told May on Sunday morning, the bags under his eyes showing how little he'd slept. "This has to stop." What Dave didn't know was that his problem wasn't fleas at all. Something far worse had made its home under his skin, something that would soon turn their quiet life upside down. But for now, all he knew was the maddening itch that wouldn't go away, no matter what he tried. Dave walked through the local pharmacy with determination, scanning each aisle until he found the pest control section. He felt a wave of embarrassment as he picked up a bottle of extra-strength flea shampoo. What would people think if they knew? An adult man with fleas. He quickly grabbed some anti-itch cream too and headed to the checkout, avoiding eye contact with the young cashier. Back home, Dave wasted no time. He jumped into the shower and scrubbed himself raw with the medicated shampoo. The burning sensation was almost a relief compared to the constant itching. He followed the instructions perfectly, leaving the shampoo on for the full 10 minutes before rinsing, even though it made his skin tingle uncomfortably. "Feel any better?" Mai asked when he emerged from the bathroom, his skin pink from the hot water and harsh chemicals. "Too soon to tell," Dave replied, though he desperately hoped it would work. He slathered himself with the anti-itch cream and put on a clean t-shirt, trying to stay positive. But by morning, his hopes were crushed. The itching hadn't stopped. If anything, it seemed worse. Dave stood shirtless in front of the bathroom mirror, twisting around to see his back. What he saw made his stomach drop. Small raised bumps had formed across his shoulders and upper back, some of them red and inflamed from his constant scratching. "This doesn't look like flea bites to me," May said, peering at his back with concern. "Maybe you should see Dr. Wilson. He could fit you in this afternoon if I call now." Dave shook his head firmly. "Not yet. I've got another idea." That idea came in the form of Whisker's flea medication, still sitting in its box on the kitchen counter. Dave read the package carefully. It was meant for cats weighing between 8 and 15 pounds. He weighed considerably more, but the principle should be the same, right? Desperate times called for desperate measures. While May was out grocery shopping, Dave made his move. He opened the small tube and squeezed a generous amount of the oily medication onto his fingers. Feeling slightly ridiculous, he rubbed it onto the back of his neck, right where the itching had first started. The medication had a strong chemical smell that made his eyes water, but if it worked for Whiskers, maybe it would work for him too. It didn't. By evening, the area where he'd applied the pet medication was red and irritated, adding a burning sensation to his already considerable discomfort. Dave tried to hide his worsening condition from May, wearing a collared shirt to dinner despite the summer heat and pretending everything was fine. "I looked up your symptoms online," May said over dinner, her eyes filled with worry. "It could be a lot of things besides fleas. An allergic reaction, eczema, even stress-related hives." "It's just fleas," Dave insisted, wincing as he resisted the urge to scratch. "The treatments need time to work, that's all." But as the days passed, Dave became less convinced of his own diagnosis. The bumps were spreading, now appearing on his chest and upper arms. Each one was small but raised, almost like something was pushing out from underneath his skin. At night, he could swear he felt movement, though he told himself it was just his imagination working overtime due to lack of sleep. His coworkers had started to notice too. Dave caught Tom staring at his neck during a meeting, quickly looking away when their eyes met. Later that day, he overheard someone in the break room mention contagious and should stay home, and knew they were talking about him. Pride kept Dave from seeking medical help. He'd always been the type to solve his own problems, and admitting defeat wasn't in his nature. But after finding spots of blood on his pillowcase from scratching in his sleep, even he had to acknowledge this was getting out of hand. One more treatment, he promised me and himself. "If this doesn't work, I'll see the doctor." What Dave didn't realize was that every day he delayed proper treatment, the situation beneath his skin was quietly, steadily getting worse. 3 in the morning. Dave stared at the glowing numbers on his bedside clock, his body exhausted but his mind wide awake. Beside him, May slept peacefully, her breathing deep and regular. He invited her rest. It had been nearly a month since the itching started, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd slept through the night. Dave carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to wake his wife. The wooden floor felt cool under his feet as he padded to the bathroom. He flicked on the light and squinted at the southern brightness. The face that looked back at him from the mirror was barely recognizable. Dark circles hung under his bloodshot eyes. His skin had a sickly pallor to it. He looked like a man being slowly drained of life. The itching was always worse at night. Something about lying still seemed to activate whatever was tormenting him. Dave turned on the cold water and splashed his face, then dampened a washcloth and pressed it against the back of his neck, hoping for some relief. As he stood there in the quiet bathroom, a terrible thought crept into his mind. What if this wasn't just some external irritation? What if something was seriously wrong with him? The idea sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold washcloth. Morning came like a mercy, ending another restless night. Dave called in sick to work, his third absence this month. His boss, usually understanding, had sounded skeptical on the phone. Dave couldn't blame him. If their roles were reversed, he might think someone was making excuses too. "You look terrible," May said bluntly as she set a cup of coffee in front of him. Her voice was gentle despite the harsh words. "This can't go on, Dave. You need help." Dave nodded weakly. He was too tired to argue anymore. "I know." "Good," May said, relief clear in her voice. "Because I'd already called Dr. Wilson. He can see you tomorrow morning." Dave should have felt grateful, but instead, a flicker of annoyance passed through him. He was a grown man, perfectly capable of making his own doctor's appointments. but even that small emotion felt like too much effort to maintain. He simply nodded and sipped his coffee. That day crawled by in a fog of discomfort and fatigue. Dave tried watching TV, but couldn't focus on the screen. He attempted to read, but the words swam before his eyes. Even Whiskers seemed to be avoiding him, keeping to the sunny spot in the living room rather than curling up on his lap as usual. By early afternoon, Dave found himself standing in front of the bathroom mirror again, shirt off, examining the increasingly alarming state of his skin. The small bumps had grown larger. Some had a strange, almost translucent quality to them, and one right on his shoulder blade seemed different from the others. He twisted around, trying to get a better look, but couldn't quite see it properly. When May came home from work, she found Dave dozing fitfully on the couch. She gently shook him awake. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting beside him. "Before your appointment tomorrow, maybe I should take a closer look at those bumps. My cousin Lily is a nurse, and she always says proper information helps doctors make faster diagnoses." Dave hesitated. Part of him didn't want anyone looking too closely at his condition, as if ignoring it might somehow make it go away. But the rational part of his brain, the part not fogged by sleep deprivation, knew she was right. "Okay," he agreed. "In the morning, when the light's better." That night was the worst yet. Dave tossed and turned, the sheets tangling around his legs as he shifted positions every few minutes, seeking comfort that never came. The itching had evolved into something more unsettling, a crawling sensation just beneath his skin that no amount of scratching could reach. As dawn broke, casting pale light through the bedroom curtains, Dave finally fell into an exhausted sleep. His last conscious thought was a desperate hope that tomorrow would bring answers, and that those answers wouldn't be worse than the unknown he'd been living with. Sunday morning light streamed through the kitchen window as Mai prepared everything she needed. A bright desk lamp borrowed from the office, a magnifying glass she used for reading fine print, a pair of tweezers just in case, and her reading glasses perched on top of her head for now. Dave sat nervously at the kitchen table, shirtless and hunched forward. He'd managed perhaps 3 hours of broken sleep, and his body ached with exhaustion. But there was something else too, a sense that they were about to cross some threshold, that after today things would change. "Try to relax," May said, pulling her chair closer to his. "I'll be gentle." Dave nodded and closed his eyes. He felt May's cool fingers on his back, carefully examining each raised bump. Her touch was light, professional almost, as she worked methodically across his shoulders. "Some of these look infected," she murmured. "From all the scratching, probably." She continued her inspection in silence for several minutes. Dave could hear birds chirping outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing by. Such normal, everyday sounds that made what was happening seem even more surreal. "This one's different," May said suddenly, her fingers pausing at a spot on his upper back. "Let me get a better look." Dave felt her lean in closer. He could feel her breath on his skin as she peered at whatever had caught her attention. "There's something." Her voice trailed off. He heard her pick up the magnifying glass. The next moment happened in slow motion. May's sharp intake of breath, the clatter of the magnifying glass hitting the floor, and then her scream. A sound Dave had never heard from his typically calm wife in their 12 years of marriage. It was primal, instinctive, the kind of scream that bypasses conscious thought. Dave jumped up and spun around. "What? What is it?" May had backed away from him, her face drained of color. Her hand was pressed against her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "Something moved," she whispered through her fingers. "Under your skin, something moved." Dave felt the room tilt slightly. "That's not possible." "I saw it," May insisted, her voice shaking. "That bump on your shoulder, it's not a bump. There's something inside it, something alive." The words hung in the air between them. Dave reached around, trying to feel the spot she'd been examining, but couldn't quite reach it. "Show me," he demanded. His heart was pounding now, fear and adrenaline cutting through his fatigue. With trembling hands, May took her phone and switched it to camera mode. She zoomed in on his back and took a photo, then handed him the phone. The image was clear enough. A raised area on his skin, about the size of a pencil eraser. But unlike the other irritated spots, this one had what looked like a tiny dark opening in the center. As Dave stared at the image, trying to make sense of what he was seeing, May took another photo. "Look at these two pictures," she said, her voice steadier now as she swiped between them. "See the difference?" Dave looked closely. In the second photo, the dark center appeared to be in a slightly different position, as if something had shifted. "It could just be the angle," he said weakly, not believing his own words. Meade shook her head. "I know what I saw. There's something in there, Dave, something moving." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too hot. Dave put the phone down carefully, as if any sudden movement might disturb whatever was apparently living in his body. "We need to go to the hospital," May said, already reaching for her car keys. "Right now. Not the doctor tomorrow, the emergency room today." For once, Dave didn't argue. The certainty in May's voice, the horror he'd seen in her eyes, these were not things his wife would fake. And deep down, hadn't he felt it too? Those strange sensations that were more than just itching, the feeling of movement when he lay still at night. "I'll get a shirt," he said quietly. 10 minutes later, they were in the car, heading toward the hospital. Neither spoke. What was there to say? The unthinkable had become real, and no words could capture the mixture of fear, disgust, and dread that filled the space between them. The emergency room was packed on that Sunday afternoon. Kids with sports injuries, elderly folks with breathing problems, and the usual weekend accidents filled the waiting area. Dave and Mai sat among them, both silent and tense. "It hurts more now," Dave whispered, leaning close to May. "It's like they know we're onto them." May squeezed his hand but said nothing. What could she say? This was beyond anything they'd ever dealt with before. After an hour of waiting, a nurse finally called Dave's name. As they followed her through the swinging doors, Dave noticed how she kept a professional distance from him. Had she picked up on May's fear? Or did he just look that awful? "What brings you in today?" the nurse asked as she took his vital signs. Her name tag read Nurse Lynn. Dave opened his mouth, then closed it again. "How do you tell someone you think there are things living inside your skin?" Mai stepped in. "My husband has had a severe skin condition for weeks that's getting worse. I just discovered what appear to be parasites under his skin." The nurse's eyebrows shot up, but her voice remained calm. "I see. And have you traveled internationally recently?" "No," Dave answered. "Haven't left the state in over a year." Nurse Lynn made some notes. "The doctor will be with you shortly." Shortly turned out to be another 40 minutes. By then, Dave's anxiety had reached a breaking point. Every itch, every tiny sensation made him jump. Was that normal nerve endings, or was it one of them moving? When Dr. Chen finally entered, he greeted them with a tired smile. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I understand we have a possible parasite situation," he said, pulling on latex gloves. "Let's take a look." Dave removed his shirt, revealing the landscape of bumps and inflamed skin that had become his new normal. Dr. Chen examined him carefully, pressing gently on various spots and making occasional hum sounds. "This one," May said, pointing to the bump she had seen move earlier. "This is the one where I saw movement." Dr. Chen leaned in closer, using a small penlight to examine the area. His professional demeanor slipped for just a moment, a slight widening of the eyes, a barely perceptible intake of breath. "I'm going to consult with a colleague," he said, straightening up. "Please wait here." When he returned, he wasn't alone. A tall woman with gray-streaked black hair followed him in. "This is Dr. Patel," Dr. Chen explained. "She specializes in tropical medicine and parasitology." Dr. Patel gave them a brief nod before turning her attention to Dave's back. Her examination was more thorough, her fingers pressing more firmly around each bump. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "About a month," Dave replied. "I thought it was fleas at first." Dr. Patel nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "And have you received any packages or products from abroad recently?" Dave started to shake his head, then stopped. "Wait, my brother sent me some exotic plants from his trip to Costa Rica. They arrived around the time this all started." Dr. Patel and Dr. Chen exchanged glances. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Patel said, her voice measured and calm, "I believe you have a human flea infestation." The words hung in the air like a bad smell. "A what?" May asked. The human bot flea is a parasitic fly native to Central and South America, Dr. Patel explained. The adult flies catch mosquitoes or other insects and attach their eggs to them. When these insects then bite a human, the eggs are transferred to the skin where they hatch. The larvae then burrow under the skin and develop there. Dave felt his stomach turn. You're saying I have fly babies growing under my skin? Dr. Patel nodded. Based on what I'm seeing, quite a few of them. This is extremely rare in the United States, almost always connected to travel or, in your case, imported items that might have carried either the flies or infected insects. How do we get them out? May asked, her face pale. We have several treatment options, Dr. Patel said, but given the extent of the infestation, I recommend immediate surgical removal under local anesthetic. The procedure is straightforward, but we'll need to do it soon. Some of these larvae appear quite developed. Dave closed his eyes, feeling a strange mix of horror and relief. Horror at what was happening to him, but relief that it had a name, an explanation, and, most importantly, a solution. Do it, he said simply. Whatever it takes. An hour later, Dave lay face down on an examination table in a treatment room. The area around each bot flea site had been numbed with local anesthetic, and though he couldn't feel pain, he was aware of the strange tugging sensations as Dr. Patel worked methodically to remove the larvae one by one. Try to stay still, she reminded him gently as he flinched. We're almost halfway through. May sat nearby, holding his hand. She'd been given the option to wait outside, but had insisted on staying. I'm not leaving you to face this alone, she told him, though Dave noticed she carefully avoided looking at what Dr. Patel was doing. A knock at the door announced the arrival of a new person. A woman in her early 40s with curly brown hair and a tablet computer introduced herself as Dr. Rivera from the County Health Department. Mr. Chen, I need to ask you some questions about how you might have contracted this parasite, she explained, pulling up a chair. This is quite unusual, and we need to determine if there's any public health risk. Dave nodded, grateful for any distraction from what was happening to his back. You mentioned plants from Costa Rica, Dr. Rivera said, looking at her notes. Can you tell me more about that? My brother Joe went there for a photography trip about 2 months ago, Dave explained. He sent me some plants he thought would look nice in our home office. Pretty thoughtful, really. When exactly did you receive these plants? Dr. Rivera asked. Dave thought back. About a month ago. The package was delayed in shipping. Joe was pretty upset about it. He was worried the plants wouldn't survive. And when did your symptoms start? A day or two after the package arrived, Dave said, the connection suddenly becoming crystal clear to him. You think the botflies came from the plants? Dr. Rivera nodded. It's the most likely explanation. The human botfly, Dermatobia hominis, doesn't usually survive long outside its native habitat. But inside a package with living plants, that could create a microclimate where they could survive the journey. So my brother accidentally sent me a box of parasites, Dave said with a grim laugh. Wait till he hears about this. He'll need to be informed, Dr. Rivera agreed. But more importantly, do you still have the plants? They're in our home office, Mai spoke up. 5 small potted plants. They've been doing really well, actually. Those plants need to be contained immediately, Dr. Rivera said, her professional calm slipping slightly. There could be more botfly eggs or even adult flies. Where else have you been since receiving the package? Have you taken the plants anywhere else? Given cuttings to friends? Dave and Mai exchanged alarmed looks. I took one of the plants to my office, Dave admitted, and we gave a cutting to our neighbor, Mrs. Wu. Dr. Rivera was already typing on her tablet. I'll need all of those addresses. We'll need to inspect and possibly quarantine those locations. The risk of these flies establishing themselves in this region is low, but we can't take chances. As Dr. Patel continued removing the larvae, 23 in total, she would later tell them, Dr. Rivera took down detailed information about everyone who might have come in contact with the plants, including Joe's information in Costa Rica. The package had to go through customs, Dave said suddenly. Shouldn't they have caught this? Dr. Rivera sighed. Agricultural inspections are thorough, but they're not perfect, especially if the package was properly declared as containing only permitted plant species. Botfly eggs are tiny and could easily be overlooked, particularly if they were attached to the soil or hidden in leaf crevices. Dave winced as Dr. Patel extracted a particularly deep larva. So what happens now? After you get all these things out of me. 6 weeks had passed since that fateful Sunday in the emergency room. Dave sat on the patio of his backyard, feeling the warm afternoon sun on his face. His back was healing well, though small scars remained where each parasite had been removed, 27 in total, after the doctors found 3 more during a follow-up examination. The physical recovery had been straightforward. Daily cleaning of the wounds, antibiotics to prevent infection, and regular checkups with Dr. Patel. Within 2 weeks, Dave had returned to work, though he noticed how his colleagues gave him a wide berth in the hallways. News travels fast in a small office. The emotional recovery was proving more difficult. Dave jumped at every small itch or tickle on his skin. Nights were still challenging, though for different reasons now. Instead of itching keeping him awake, it was the nightmares, dreams of things crawling beneath his skin, of waking up to find his entire body riddled with tiny moving bumps. May appeared at the patio door, holding 2 steaming mugs. Dave smiled at her. "Thanks. How was your call with your mom?" "Good. She's still telling all her friends about our adventure," May said, sitting beside him. "Apparently we're famous in her Machon group." Dave laughed, though it wasn't entirely funny. Their experience had indeed made them temporarily famous. The local newspaper had run a story about the Botfly incident, positioning it as a cautionary tale about importing plants. The county health department had even asked them to record a short video for their website, warning others about the dangers of bringing biological materials across borders. "Heard from Joe lately?" May asked, sipping her tea. Dave nodded. "Got an email this morning. He's still feeling guilty, even though I've told him 100 times it wasn't his fault." His brother had been horrified when he learned what his gift had caused. He'd had no idea the plants could harbor such dangerous hitchhikers. Since then, Joe had become almost obsessive about agricultural regulations and was now volunteering with an environmental education group in Costa Rica, teaching tourists about the importance of respecting import/export laws. "Did I tell you Mrs. Wu finally invited us over again?" May said. "I think she's finally convinced we're not going to infest her home with exotic bugs." Their neighbor had been understandably upset when officials in hazmat suits had shown up to confiscate the plant cutting they'd given her. It had taken several weeks and many home-baked apology cookies before she'd warmed up to them again. The health department's response had been swift and thorough. All the plants from Costa Rica had been confiscated and destroyed. Their home had been inspected from top to bottom, with particular attention paid to their bedroom and office. Whiskers had received a clean bill of health, though the cat seemed more cautious around Dave now, as if sensing something had changed. "I got a call from that researcher today," Dave mentioned, watching a hummingbird dart around their newly planted, thoroughly local garden. "The one from the university. Dr. Kim. What did she want?" "She's finished analyzing the larvae they took from me. Turns out they were a particularly uncommon species of botfly, even for Costa Rica. She's writing a paper about the case." "So you'll be famous in scientific circles too," May teased. "Enormously famous," Dave corrected. "Patient X who thought he had fleas." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping their tea. A light breeze rustled the leaves of their new plants, all purchased from local nurseries and thoroughly inspected before bringing them home. "You know what's strange?" Dave said finally. "In some weird way, I'm almost grateful this happened." May raised her eyebrows. "Grateful for being eaten alive by parasitic fly babies?" "Not for that part," Dave clarified with a small smile. "But before all this, I was so caught up in work, always busy, always stressed. This experience, it forced me to slow down, to appreciate simple things. Like sitting here with you, parasite-free." May reached over and took his hand. "Silver linings from botflies. Who would have thought?" "And it taught me something important," Dave continued. "When something's wrong, don't ignore it. Don't try to tough it out or fix it yourself when it's clearly beyond your expertise." "A lesson many husbands could stand to learn," May said with a gentle squeeze of his hand. The following week, Dave had his final checkup with Dr. Patel, who pronounced him fully recovered. As he was leaving her office, she handed him a small, sealed specimen jar. "What's this?" Dave asked, holding it up to the light. Inside was what appeared to be a single preserved pot flea larva floating in clear liquid. "One of yours," Dr. Patel explained. "I thought you might want a souvenir of your experience. Sometimes having a tangible reminder of what we've overcome can be therapeutic." Dave stared at the jar, at the tiny creature that had caused him so much suffering. It seemed smaller now, less threatening. Just a preserved specimen, no longer able to burrow or grow or multiply. "Thanks," he said, carefully tucking the jar into his pocket. Not because he wanted a souvenir, but because he knew exactly what he was going to do with it. That evening, he mailed the jar to his brother in Costa Rica with a short note attached. "No hard feelings. But next time, just send a postcard."